Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the Lancashire panel of the Institution of Mechanical Engineers, I would like to welcome you to tonight's presentation. Andy Hunter is Director of Envisage, a company I have enjoyed visiting on a couple of occasions through my work, and thought that others may also enjoy hearing from Andy and the wonderful work they do at Envisage, recreating iconic classic cars. Hopefully there'll be time for Andy to answer a few questions at the end of the presentation. Anyway, without further ado, I'll hand over to Andy. Thank you very much.
Thanks for inviting me to do this talk, Dave. And thanks for everyone for joining tonight's webinar. Probably should explain how me and Dave met. So obviously, you know, Dave works for Coleman Mill up in Bolton. We did quite a lot of work with Coleman over the years. And Dave happened to visit our workshop in Coventry when we were halfway through a large 25 off build for an OEM, of a recreation of an iconic classic car. So as Dave came into the workshop, there was 3 build tables, a couple of cars ready to go back to the customer, various rear clams, bonnets, and various body parts all over the shop, and 20 guys working busily on creating this classic car, and it must have looked like something from the 1950s. So when Dave seen it, he said to me, "Wow!" And he said, "I can't believe this. Would you like to do a present at the IMEC?" And I thought, well, yeah, fantastic, a great idea to advertise what we do here at Envisage Classic and Bespoke, and advertise the traditional metalworking skills that we possess here and the skills that we're trying to retain through our apprentice training program. So a little bit about myself and how I started on this journey. So I went to ordinary comprehensive school after taking O-levels. I left school at 16. I was advised to stay at school and continue my education, but I had a great desire to get into making things and being involved in the automotive industry. I had a great passion for classic cars, particularly Jaguars, and it was something that was probably from the early days of being a child. My grandfather had Mark IIs and E-types, so some of my early memories are sitting in that and driving around in those cars with him, and it must have had an effect on me and them early days. And it's something that I always knew I wanted to do. I was lucky enough to have a 2-week work experience at Park Sheet Metal in Coventry, and after the 2 weeks, I'd made my mind up really that that's what I wanted to do. And in Coventry at the time, we had all the big companies. There was places like Massey Ferguson, Dunlop, Alvis, Jaguar, Land Rover, and some aircraft companies. And you would apply to all of those companies as a school leaver. I had quite a few interviews and got offered other jobs with other companies, but it was definitely the route I wanted to go down was the sheet metal route. So I ended up joining Park Sheet at 16 and did the traditional 4-year apprenticeship. And it was back in the days, and it was City and Guilds 216 in plate craft studies and the ITB certificate of craftsmanship. But I really enjoyed apprenticeship at Park Sheet. It was a great time as well there to do that. They were building bodies such as the Rolls-Royce Camargue, Jaguar XJS Cabriolets, Daimler 420 limos, Bentley Continental R-Type was done there. And they did the first Jaguar XJ 220 concept car at Park while I was an apprentice there. So it was a great place to work at that time and serve your apprenticeship, and got some really good advice there. One of the old boys that I worked with there, he said to me, "Andy, you need to learn every skill and every job in this workshop during your apprenticeship. The more you can learn here during your apprenticeship, the better. And then when you finish your apprenticeship, keep learning while you're young. Go to different companies, experience different aspects of the trade. So that's what I did. I moved on from Parksheet when I finished my apprenticeship. I think I did a year at Park, and then I went off to a company called Project Aerospace that did some aircraft work and concept prototype car work mainly for OEMs in Germany. And then during my time there, I ended up actually working in Germany. So I spent quite a lot of time at Karmann in Osnabrück, and that was a great time and a great place to learn as well. You know, the Germans very, very good at press work, and so good at press work that they'd almost left some of the hand skills behind. So I think they very quickly realised that the British lads had really good hand skills to offer. And we spent quite a time over there, and I've still got friends now over there that work for companies that set up after Karmann. Karmann became VW Osnabrück. There's a company called SD Automotive that we do a lot of work with they're just south of Osnabrück. Really, really good prototype company, low volume builds, and it's all the guys that we used to work with in Karmann. So I think 3 years ago I had about 14 guys working over there, and we were with them for about a 2-year stint. You know, sometimes there were only 4, other times 8, and up to 4, like I said, up to 14. So yeah, I got some great friends that I made from that time. Then I moved on to Abbey Panels, another great place to work. At that time they were doing a lot of aircraft work. I spent a lot of time in the aircraft shop, so we were doing Rolls-Royce RB211 engine frame assemblies with 3,000 rivets in them, Pegasus engine ducts and nozzles. Pegasus was the engine for the Harrier jump jet. I think there was over 3,000 rivets in the airframe that we did for Rolls-Royce. Used a lot of different materials like non-monic, jetty, titanium, Inconel, and aluminium alloys that were heat treated. You could only work them, you had to keep them in the freezer, and you could only work them for 10 minutes, you had to go back in the freezer. So yeah, there's some really interesting stuff at Abbey Panels, and there was a big link between us and Abbey Panels because a lot of the iconic classic cars that we're recreating now were originally done in the 50s and 60s at Abbey Panels, and those skills were passed down, you know, through the generations to me and the guys, a lot of the guys that work here that worked at Abbey's, and those skills are still here today. So I think it's a great thing that we could some of the cars that were handmade in the 50s in Coventry can still be handmade now in 2021 in Coventry. But it's our job to be custodians of those skills and pass them down now to the next generation. And we're quite heavily involved with that here at Envisage Classic and Bespoke. After time at Abbey Panels, I spent time in restoration companies, Leaping Cats. We did an early car, I think it was XK120 JWK 651. So it was an early alley car on an ash frame. Great projects to do. And little did I know how valuable that would become as my career progressed. Went back to CPP. I did some time in the office there. Did a couple of years in the office and did an ILM management training. Quite enjoyed it. It was a good time. We were doing a lot of work at the time for Spiker as well. That was an interesting time. So we were lucky enough to be involved with the race program, and I went to Le Mans in 2002 and worked the pits for the week. That was something special. That was really good, really interesting. Then CPP was owned by a couple of lads. I mean, I knew them from way back, the two lads that owned CPP, but one of the guys sold his shares to a Russian businessman, and they pumped a lot of money in, and the company grew very quickly. We were up to, I think there was about 5 sites. There was 3 sites in Coventry and 1 in Northampton. I think they even bought Zagato in Milan at one stage. But the Russians' business empire started to crumble, and I think it was 2012 that they ran into difficulties, and CPP went into administration, and luckily the Envisage Group bought the assets of CPP. Some of the guys broke away and went with the old owner, but I stuck with Envisage, and I think it's been a good decision. Envisage acquired the assets of CPP so that they could have a full turnkey engineering solution. So they already had design, engineering. They had a company that was visioneering, that could make books, E-cubes, show cars. So the thing that they didn't have was somewhere that could actually make a car from the flat material. So we were the sort of missing part of the jigsaw. And then as it developed at Envisage, they knew I'd done a little bit of time in the office before, and they asked me to take control of the classic car division, which was a dream job for me. As I'd worked in the classic car world, and I was a massive enthusiast of classic cars. And there was a lot of changes in the early days as we came over to Envisage, and as people retired and left the business, I ended up taking the reins of what was at the time Envisage Manufacturing Limited. I looked at our strengths, and what we had was really good hand skills, definitely some of the most talented metal workers around. Press and laser business was oversubscribed with very little margins. Therefore, I decided we'd go down the high-end classic and niche car market. I thought there'd be a bit more life in that business. So once we knew what our market was, we started to explore that, and we downsized the business to get a hold of it, and then very quickly we started to grow again. And then we ended up in our Queen Close facility where we are today in 2015. 2016, I was promoted to Director of Classic Envisage Manufacturing. And in 2018, we were carrying out so much Classic and Bespoke work, we changed the name to Envisage Classic and Bespoke Limited. And it's my responsibility now to look after ECB and nurture the traditional hand skills we have, and help the new generation learn valuable skills. Once we let these skills die, they'll never come back. So it's very important to me and all the guys at Envisage that we pass these skills down, and we continue to be able to do these, hand make these cars in Coventry.
So, Envisage Classic and Bespoke. There's been a big trend in the market recently for OEMs to recreate heritage and iconic classic cars of the past. We've gained a really good, strong reputation in this field, and it started way back when we did we recreated an iconic car. The detail that we went into was really right down to on the original cars there was a weld left on the carb trays, so we did that. We left the weld on the carb trays. The first car that we built of this variant, I worked on the car with a good friend of mine that still works here now, and we both were obviously coming from an aircraft background as well. We were very particular about the riveting on the car, and the riveting's got to be neat. And so the back end of the car, inside this particular car, it's all aluminium, all riveted up nice. Really happy with it. The customer came. I said to him, right, he had a look over the car. What do you think? He said, oh, I love it. He said, it's fantastic. He said, apart from them rivets in the back. And I said, oh my God, but they're perfect. And he said, yes, I know they're perfect, but the Italians didn't put them in like that. I want some hammer marks in there. So, that was the level of detail that we went into on that project that we did probably about 8 years ago. And that was a massive learning curve for us and a real valuable lesson. So not only do we do classic cars and sheet metal work, we're involved in other bespoke work as well. So the slide on the right showing those flutes there, that was an interesting job that we did over about a 6-month period, and we made lots and lots of these copper parts, fluted panels, different shapes, different curves. We didn't have any idea what they were going on, and it ended up that they were for Harrods department store, and our guys went down and helped the supplier build them up in a warehouse in Thirsk, and then they were shipped into Knightsbridge. So they had to take the roof off Harrods and then crane the lift, the escalators in there. But yeah, I mean, I went into Harrods when I was down in London with the wife, and we had a look, and it was really rewarding. A little bit different to a classic car, but it was still rewarding. So similar work to this we've done is furniture. We've done a lot of stuff for London artists and designers over the years. It's all interesting work and allows us to show off our metalworking skills. So we like to use a combination of latest digital techniques and traditional craftsmanship to produce a car that's dimensionally correct and lives up to the modern day expectations for quality, panel gaps, panel flushmas, cosmetic A-class finish. So we start the program by interrogating an original car. What we found from the early days of recreating cars was that it's much better to just use one car. So you find the best example you can and you use that chassis and body number. That's the car you're going to copy. Because what we've found is if you try and merge cars together, oh man, you're in all sorts of pain. You know, we did the early car I spoke to you about that we did about 8 years ago. When we recreated that car, we copied a good original car. However, every other couple of weeks I'd get a call from the customer. We've got another one in, Andy. Come and have a look at this car. It's different to the one that we've done. Every car we looked at was slightly different in different areas. So that was another big lesson. If we're going to recreate a car, what we do, we pick one car, one chassis number, and that's the car that we recreate. So another thing that we do at the beginning is we'll examine the original car, record all the rivet pitches and dimensions, anything unique to the car, because you know the collectors and the people that will buy these cars, they know so much about the cars that there's things that they're going to be looking at that you need to capture. You have to do it. And you know, the devil's in the detail. So we try and get as much info as possible. And also another thing that we did was we think about how it would be made in period. We've recently done a pre-war project, and it was interesting. We looked at the louver panels that sit in the side of the bonnet, and at first glance, you know, we thought, oh yeah, we'll make a little press tool and we'll pop that in under our rubber press, and then we'll tidy it up by hand. And then the more I looked, I thought, hang on a minute, guys, we're really missing this. What would have they used in the 30s? When you look at any footage or any pictures from the 30s, fly presses in a sheet metal shop. The sheet metal shops are full of fly presses. So we looked at these louvers, and it was quite an odd one. The louver was pressed in and then pressed back out. So that's how we tackled it. And we had some laser blanks made up with tooling pegs, and we did it on a Promicam, and they come out absolutely fantastic. But I found that really helpful to think, you know, what did they do in the day? It really pays off to think, you know, how they would have done it then. They didn't have what we've got now. You know, they were much simpler. So we choose the right donor car, we scan it, then we surface it. CAD team works with our guys to design the hammer form tooling. So we'll see our CNC facility then will machine the hammer form tooling, which is accurate to about 0.2 of a mil. So that you can see the slides there. That's for the Healy project that we did, and that's a material called Sika 940 model board. And working over that in aluminium, you'll get about 50 panels off that. If you were to use steel, you'd chew it up, sort of, you know, you'd be lucky to get 10 off it. But aluminium, you get 50 easy, and then you could do a local repair and probably get another 50 off it. So yeah, we like to use that Sika model board for aluminium. And then once the you know, and also another thing with the tooling is we put a lot of thought into how we're going to make the tool. So, for instance, a car that's got a big front clam on it, a big front bonnet, we wouldn't just cut a bonnet with the lower valance on. We'd cut it maybe halfway down in the mouth. We'd make the lower underpan as a separate tool and flip it up in the air so you can work and wheel over the top. There's nothing more than frustrating than having to wheel a panel and try and offer it underneath the jig. So the more information, more we think about the tooling up front, the easier it is to actually use it in the workshop. So then once we've got the tools, we can set about shaping the panels up with our wheeling machines. And that forms the panel up over the tooling, and then we use the tools with the hard edges and hammer form techniques to give us the edges to work to. And the wheeling machine works by squeezing the sheet metal between the two wheels. The top wheels are generally flat. The lower wheels are interchangeable. They've got different shapes. So if you're doing a flatter panel, you'll have a nice flat wheel with radiused edges, which will work nice on a flat panel. You might want to turn an edge over where you'd have a flat wheel with a sharp edge, and you'd be able to throw an edge over. And if you're working on something really bulbous, you'd have something like an onion wheel in there to get in and shape it up quite quickly. So that's using the wheeling machine. And you know, with the wheeling machine, I think a good way to think about it, you know, particularly for young lads when they're learning, is you can only stretch it or shrink it. And once you get, you know, if you put a little bit too much shape in a panel, you can always let it out on the edge. So in theory, you shouldn't be scrapping any material there once you know how to use the machine. And I liken it to almost like a box of tricks that, you know, you can form a shape, and then you can stretch and shrink one side, and stretch one side, shrink the other side, and you'll see it start curving round. So once you get used to using it, it's a really good technique for making these, you know, classic car parts, niche car parts, low volume. So then once we've made the panels on the hammer form, we can check that they're dimensionally correct, and also we use the CMM table before the panels go onto the build to inspect those. Then when it comes to building the car, we follow the same sort of rules. So we'll use a bilge jig or a car bench. Some of the classics we've done, they really suit a Farrow arm. Others will suit a Stiefelmeier. So we'll pick up a datum and then start building the car using the CAD data. So the original cars in CAD, the panel hammer forms are machined to the CAD. The next step is then building the car using the same CAD, and you must follow those rules and keep everything as close as possible to the CAD data. And that's how we keep these recreations as close as we can. I mean, this is a technique we used to use years ago on when we built concept cars and early prototypes for the OEMs. And obviously with that work sort of dropping off a little, and obviously advancements in tooling, it's something that we can still use now, but in the classic world. Just on Envisage's capability, we've actually built 40 handmade bodies in about a 3-year period, which I think is pretty good going. One thing we can talk about is we did a Healey project for the shareholders. Envisage is owned by wealthy individuals who are into property, hotels. They've got places in Mallorca and in west coast of America. One of the shareholders said to me, he said, "Andy, you make all these cars for the people. You've never made anything for me. Will you make me a car?" And we just come back from Essen, and we knew there was a little bit of a gap in the Healey market, and we knew that people in general, they liked Healeys, and we said, well, what about doing a Healey for you? We could do a left-hand drive Healey. When we've completed it, we'll ship it to Mallorca, and you can use it in Mallorca. It'd be ideal. So he said, "Yeah, fantastic, Andy. I'll fund it." So he funded buying the donor car and going through the same process that we do, scanning all the panels, creating all the hammer forms. We stripped the car mechanically and started. I mean, the chassis, we totally rebuilt the chassis, and it was a great project. And we did it as a bit of fun for the shareholders. We ended up taking it to Essen in 2019. What we did, we were rushing to try and get it into the paint shop, and I kept looking at the car. Every day I'll go out into the workshop, and the car looked so beautiful. And I stood there and I thought, well, why don't we take it like this to the show in bare metal? So that's what we did. We had the interior trimmed, all the engine and run gear. It was a drivable car, but just not painted, to show the quality of the panels. And some of the people at Essen were saying, well, what's this finish on the car? What's this paint finish? It's not paint. That's how we finish our panels. And we had another car on the stand as well, and the wheeling machine at Essen. We got a lot of interest in the Healey and the using the wheeling machine. We had to stop giving demos after a while. It just got a bit crazy. And then and another thing we're just taking on. This is a car for one of our directors. So he's bought a 62 E-Type. We've done quite a few E-Types now. So the car you see on the left there, the silver car, is a Californian car, import 62 car. We'll strip that. We've got the spec now that he wants to build the car to, and we'll start a complete restoration of that. And it's a little bit of a progression, and it's sort of, for us, not just being a metal shop, it gives us a progression into restoring cars all the way through. We have got some mechanical guys with us now, and we've got trim guys, we've got our own paint shop. So the group situation does lead itself to doing a full restoration. And the picture on the right hand side there, you can see is an E-type that we've fully restored. So we'll blast the body and replace any panel. You know, I mean, some of these cars we've virtually rebuilt from scratch. I mean, that one there, you can see it's got a new bonnet on, new doors. And another thing we do on E-types that we like to try and keep it correct to period is that unlike a lot of restorers and restoration shops who are doing E-types, we don't use filler. We'll use lead. We'll lead load the cars the same as they were originally. We've got quite a few guys here that you know, worked with me in the early days at Park Sheet, and you know, lead loading brass joints and metal finishing. That was building cars. That was their bread and butter. So you know, this is a great job for us building these E-types, and you know, if we've had quite a few inquiries, so I can see that being quite a big market for us moving forward. The E-type still seems to have a big pull, and having them in the workshop as well. When you go out there every day and see them in the workshop, you realise how beautiful they are. They're absolutely fantastic. So yeah, hopefully that's going to carry on. And then this is another thing that we've done, very similar to what we do with recreating a classic, however slightly different. It's on a modern platform. This particular car is the Bentley GTZ for Zagato. So this was done in conjunction with Bentley and Zagato. I think we built the first one back in 2007, and we did the last one a couple of years ago. Fantastic job to do. So we start with a donor car that we strip, and there's a lot of new panels go into the roof that change the DLO line there, and obviously there's a double bubble roof to go in, so that all the header panels change. Quite a lot of changes around the back end, around the boot. It's all totally different around there, and it's a mainly steel-bodied car with aluminium boot and bonnet. That was a great job to work on. Really enjoyed doing those. Lovely car when it's finished. That one in the pictures actually is the only one that had spats over the rear wheels. All the others would just have the traditional arch. But we have done some other cars like this that are bespoke creations for private customers that are on a modern platform, but with a 60 style body. And both of these involved scanning the donor platform, the original cars, lengthening and widening the body to fit to the donor underbody. You know, obviously, because some of this work that we've carried out is for private customers, it is a little bit sensitive to share on an open forum. So I'm a little bit limited what we can say about that. But they were fantastic jobs to do. So, and again, it was a great group project. The design work was carried out in-house. We did a lot of engineering, CAA studies. Interior was redesigned, but with a modern twist. Aerodynamic studies were done to make sure that the body gave a pleasant driving experience. And as I said, the panel manufacturer went down the same route as much the same as what we did with the classic. So hammer forming, wheeling over the body books. The only difference is probably the body assembly is slightly different to a lot of the classics we've done, in that we used a bit more of the modern technologies, you know, self-piercing with its monobolts and adhesives, and both of those other projects we tackled were turnkey projects, all the way through. So we really trying to keep these traditional skills alive and combining them with modern technology to enable us to create a really high quality, high-end product for our customer. And at Envisage, we're really committed training the youngsters. And I touched on it earlier in the talk. Somebody said to me once, they were making a film. They were doing a film for some of the cars that we'd done here. I think it was for all four. And they said, the interviewer said to me, Andy, what's your biggest achievement here at Envisage? And I stopped and thought about it, and I thought, well, it's not about me. It's not about Envisage. It's about the youngsters that we're trying to bring through and retaining the skills. So, you know, it's nothing more rewarding than seeing the youngsters come through and enjoy what they're doing. We've got a lad in the workshop at the minute, and he's just wheeled a bonnet up this week, and it looks fantastic. And that's what it's all about. You know, we're trying to keep the skills alive, keep the skills here, so we continue being able to make these wonderful creations. Okay, Dave?
Yes, thank you, Andy. If we could start answer a few questions for us, please.
Yeah, no problem.
How are the cars registered? Are they registered as new cars? But if so, how can you meet the current legislation for a new car?
Right. Yeah, that's a good question. So, with a lot of the recreations that we've done, particularly for the OEMs, they'll be track-only cars. And if it's a little bit difficult for me to say exactly what they are because, you know, we've got NDAs in place with the companies. But if you've looked on our website, you'll know what they are. So some of the cars are on original VIN numbers, original plates that were left over from cars that were lost and cars that were never built. We have had other cars in the early days that you know, if they're doing less, like a one-off, you know, that they'll go around it by saying it's a rebodied car. But yeah, a lot of the OEM stuff, it can't be driven on the road. It is only for track use.
Okay, thank you. Another question, Andy. Your work must be highly skilled. Do you have difficulty in retaining and finding the multi-skilled staff that you need?
Great question. Yeah, we do. You know, I mean, you know, trying to find people now is very difficult. You know, I'll cast my mind back to when, you know, what we spoke about when I was an apprentice. In Coventry at the time, you know, you would have Park Sheet Metal probably when I worked there as a kid, there was probably 120 guys. Down the road at Abbey Panels, 200 guys. Chin's Aircraft Company, 100 guys. Corner Crofts, another 50. You know, there was people everywhere that could do this sort of work. And as I've been doing this probably 35 years. In them 35 years, it's changed so much, and it's become much more niche. I remember a couple of years ago, the HR manager here asked me to accompany him to Coventry Technical College to see the course that the boys were doing and to see what I thought. And I went in the college, and they had a really enthusiastic lecturer, fantastic guy, but he was a machinist. They still had some of the old hammers and some of the old kit that we used. But I just looked and I thought, this is going to be really difficult, you know, to train these guys here. They're doing more of a generic engineering course, which was fine, but nothing like what I did when I was an apprentice. So what we did, you know, by doing that visit, it really opened my eyes, and I said, look, Tom, we've got to train the lads here for how we want them. They're not going to learn that at college. You know, they'll learn the generic engineering, but that's fantastic. But for the specialised stuff, we've got to do it here. We can't rely on someone else training. And that's why we put such a big emphasis on these youngsters. And the other thing that I found as well that's difficult is we had some really, really good tradesmen here that I worked with when I was 16. and you know, a lot of them now are retired. We've probably the last 2 or 3 years we've lost 5 or 6 really good people. And we're just lucky actually that we were thinking a little bit ahead, and we got some of the youngsters in place and got on with the old boys, and then we got some of the old boys, rather than making work a full week, they'd do 2 or 3 days a week. But what was more interested in was getting out of their heads their experience, because you know, some of them guys have worked in the trade all their life, and the amount of experience and the know-how they've got, as soon as they're retired, you know, you lose it all. So yeah, it is difficult, and I'm very pleased with the lads we've got at the minute. We've got some really good apprentices that have come through, and when we have apprentices come in here, they'll tour the group to see what they want to do, whether they want to be they want to work in show cars, they want to work in engineering, or they want to work here in the metal shop. And it's usually somebody from the group brings them round. And I remember the last visit with the apprentices, I thanked them for visiting, and Ian said to me, well, you're going to give them a bit of a talk about classic and bespoke. I said, well, look, if it's great if you want to come work here, that's fantastic. But one thing you got to know now, it's dirty, it's smelly, and it's hard work. And he said, you're not selling it, are you, Andy? I said, no, but that's the fact. You really have got to want to do this. If you want to succeed at this, you really have got to be prepared to go in that workshop and work hard. So, it can be difficult getting the right people, Dave, definitely.
Following on from that, 2 more questions. How many apprentices are you able to take, and how long is your training period?
Well, at the moment we've got 3 because we have downsized a little in the last year with the economic downturn and obviously this COVID situation. So in the past we have actually had up to 7. The 3 guys who are coming through now will probably finish this summer coming. They'll be finishing, and we will be probably looking to take another couple of lads on. It's we will be looking for some guys definitely in the future.
Good, glad to hear it. We've got another couple of questions I'm going to combine, in fact 3. All of the examples of the cars that you've demonstrated so far are very high value, expensive cars. Do you ever work on more modest cars such as midgets or anything like that? And also, what was the typical price for one of your vehicles? And particularly for an E-Type, what would an indicative cost for that would be?
Yeah, I mean, an E-Type sort of fully restored, you're probably looking, you're going to be around the sort of 250 to 280 mark, something like that, depending on the spec. I'm looking at that GTZ car we did for Zagato. I think they were around €1 million. Some of the cars that we've done for the OEMs, I know they've been up at anywhere between 1.2 to 1.8 million. But yeah, I mean the Healy's a lot more affordable. The one we did for the shareholders, I think we paid 30k for the donor, and they're probably around anywhere between 60 and 100. I have noticed some of the more desirable cars creeping up. We have actually in the past we used to do a lot of work for a company called Moss. So we do a lot of Triumph bits and pieces. So yeah, we have done the more everyday classic as well in the past, and Cortina as well. The Cortina Mark 1 Owners Club. We used to make a lot of aluminium door skins and bonnets and boots for the racers, and they were quite nice jobs to do. So yeah, we occasionally we will get involved with the more everyday, if you want to call it, part of the market for sure. But yeah, I mean, recently it has mainly been high-end recreations.
Right, we've got another question here, Andy, more technical one, about the method of forming. Do you use oxyacetylene or do you use TIG in your
Oh,
welding?
that's a great question. Yeah, because I've got that in my present, but I've totally missed that out, Dave. So yeah, what we found years ago when when I was working on the shop floor, we used to gas weld a lot of stuff, and I used to like gassing it because I'd run it back through the wheel. So if you can run it back through the wheeling machine, it crushes the weld down, and it can make finishing the panel a lot easier. But what happened was there was a bit of a move to TIG welding, and everyone was using TIG welding through the sort of 90s and 2000s, and then when we started, it was probably about 3 years ago when we started doing some recreations that had really bulbous rear ends and front ends. We looked and we thought, bloody hell, we should resurrect the gas welding. They were gas welded originally. So I had a chat with a couple of the guys, and they said, well, yeah, let's try it, but we've got no flux. So I said, well, hang on a minute. I think I've got some in the garage. So Thursday night, went into the garage, found some flux. Friday morning, come in here, mixed some flux up, got some aluminium out, and away we went. And we all had a go at gas welding. And then before you know it, we were gas welding all the big bulbous panels and running it back through the wheel. And it looked absolutely fantastic. So there is areas though where you wouldn't gas weld, it's just easier to TIG on on some of the bits that require more detail around the finishing edges and things like that. But certainly on the big panels, gas welding is really good.
Andy, you've obviously got the capability, but has Envisage ever considered making its own car? Maybe a modern, but brand new, complete new car. Is that something?
We have. Yeah, we're always kicking this one around, and it would be fantastic to do. We've had various designs, and we have got a project of our own that we're trying to get off the ground at the moment. So with any luck, I think we're going to do something. So that would be a great project. But yeah, I mean, you're right, Dave. Ultimately, that would be absolutely fantastic to do.
I've got another interesting question, looking at the future, about possibility of electrifying some of your classic cars. Is that something that you'd be looking into?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, we've had quite a few inquiries on that, and I can see it would be a big part of our work in the future for sure. The electric option, and I think that there is units available that you wouldn't have to destroy your classic car. You could take the engine out and then keep that if ever you wanted to convert it back to a conventional. But I'm an absolute classic nut, and originally I was a bit like, oh my god, an electric classic. But the more I've thought about it, and the more I see, and the more I talk to the younger generation, I think it's coming, and it will come, and I think it's a good thing. My lad works in London, and with the COVID situation, he's working from home, so I've got him at home, and I'll talk about some of the cars we're making, and he'll say, Dad, you can't make them cars now. It's not right. It's not right for the environment. So the younger generation do think about things, I think, differently to us, and yeah, I think there's definitely a big market there for the electrified classics for sure.
Right. I've got one question I don't think you can answer on specifics of some of the cars you've worked on. Unfortunately, I know you've you're restricted what you can do about some of the projects. But I've got a nice last question, and I'd like to know the answer to this one. What future icons should we be buying now?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, sort of, you know, with classic cars, it was always that car that someone wanted to own when they were younger, but could never afford or could never quite get to. And sometimes as well with classics, it is cars that people owned when they were younger. So I'm just thinking about sort of, I grew up in the 80s, so just an example, I'd probably be wanting something like what I had as a youth, like as crazy as it sounds, something like an XR2 or a Capri, or something along those lines. And we see, you're seeing it now with the values of some of those cars, going up and up. So, I don't think it's always about the cars actually, it's a Ferrari or it's a Lamborghini, and I think there is a lot of interest in the everyday cars that people used to drive, all them years ago, and very nostalgic to relive their youth, if you like.
Right, thank you very much, Andy. Thanks for an interesting and enjoyable presentation. As expected, it was fascinating and great. I hope,
thanks, Dave.
I hope everybody who's joined the presentation has enjoyed this evening. I'm keen to continue to run a wide range of virtual events and look forward to running some events in person soon. We're thinking probably towards October, but watch this space. Please keep an eye on the IMechE LinkedIn, NEU and Webinar Hub for forthcoming events. If you have an idea for an event, please let us know, and ideally, come and help us arrange it. Thanks again for your attendance on behalf of the Lancashire panel of the Institution of Mechanical Engineers. Good night. Thank you.